Good day to you from wherever you're listening from around the world. I am your host, Pamela R Haynes. This week I caught up with Juliet G on her early morning breakfast show on Supreme FM. If you would like to listen to one or two of my interviews, please go to linktree/Pamela R Haynes. You will also find the link on my profile on my Instagram and Facebook pages. If you love herbal teas, why not use the discount code A2AS5 for 10% off your next Dalgety tea order. Dalgety delivers teas worldwide, so why not treat yourself today? In this week's episode, I had the pleasure of interviewing fellow fiction writer Yvonne Brissett. We discussed her fantastic book, The Sweetest Sound. Let's jump into her interview now. See you on the other side. Hello there, Yvonne. Thank you for joining me on the Author to Author podcast this evening. How are you doing?
I'm really good, thank you, Pamela, and thank you for having me. I'm very excited about this interview.
Yes, me too, because I made a start. I did say to you that I would make a start on your book before the interview. Thank you so much for donating 2 copies of your book, The Sweetest Sound. I know it's going to make an excellent competition prize for someone because I've just started. I'd love to say that I'd finished, but I'm up to page 70. I've made a good start and I'm determined to finish it because I'm quite enjoying the story. But tell us a little bit about yourself, Yvonne. Where in the world were you born? Where were you raised? And in terms of your heritage, who are you representing?
I was born in Gloucester. It's quite a small town, and that's where I was raised. I'm the youngest of 7 children. I've got 3 elder brothers and 3 elder sisters. And so we were raised in quite a rural area. So when I was growing up at the time, it was one of those places where there were hardly any cars around. The streets were pitch black at 7 o'clock, no public transport. So we spent a lot of time having to be creative because there wasn't really a lot to do. So my parents were both very, very creative and encouraged us from a young age to be quite creative. So I'd be writing and reading and doing all sorts of creative things. We had kind of a Huckleberry Finn lifestyle, i.e., our back garden led onto a hillside. So we spent majority of the time sort of running around in the hillside, in the lake, and everything like that. So it was quite an idyllic childhood. I really enjoyed my childhood. And my parents are both from Jamaica. They came over in the 60s. So I'm of Jamaican origin.
And where are you based now?
I'm now based in Birmingham. I'm based in Birmingham city centre. So I'm sort of right in the heart. I've moved completely away from country life and country living to be a city girl, mainly because of my work and what I do for my as a day job. But I am a country girl at heart. So any opportunity to be anywhere near nature, I'm always trying to get there. I love nature. Yeah, I enjoy the city as well. I definitely do enjoy city life. So I think I've got the best of both worlds. I can go back home to the countryside or I can hang out in the city and it's nice and vibrant.
Well, I've been to Birmingham a couple of times. So I've visited Aston, I think it is,
Yeah.
Handsworth, and obviously Birmingham city centre. So I've shopped at the Boring and stayed
Okay.
at a couple of hotels in Birmingham
Yes.
as well. And I love how cosmopolitan it is as well. You know, people from all walks of life live in and around the centre, which is really nice.
Very much so. I think Birmingham's a very vibrant city. There's been a lot of regeneration here over the past few years, and it's sort of very up and coming, a lot happening. And Aston, in fact, is where I'm a member of a book club. That's where we meet once a month. And so I'm very
Oh,
familiar with that area. Yeah,
right.
Birmingham's a very vibrant city. I enjoy living here. It's a lot, there's a lot going on. It's enjoyable.
Fantastic. Well, I've made a start of your book, The Sweetest Sound, Lyrics, Love and Lies. I think I'm up to the bit where they're meeting in Nando's, your main characters. But tell us a bit, what is your book about?
So my book is about a young woman. She's in her early 30s, looking for love in probably all the wrong places. She's very much of this generation, as in we're in a generation at the moment where quite often everyone wants everything right now as opposed to waiting for it or working for it. She's managed to do quite well for herself because she works for a television station an urban entertainment station. And it's a bit like MTV. However, it's a very small operation run by a guy, and there's only, a few staff, and they're always turning up for work late. And the station is facing closure because with YouTube and the entertainment, all the other TV channels, no one's really watching them. So she works there as a television presenter and producer, and her boss comes up with an idea. He says that basically she needs to come up with an idea that could possibly save the station because otherwise her job's on the line. So she comes up with an idea. She's a bit of a gold digger in her pursuit for a man. She is looking for someone who's quite wealthy and can give her the life that she wants without her having to do much. So she comes up with an idea for a reality dating show, and it's a mixing music with her kind of combining her interest with gold digging. And the book is really about how that program goes and whether or not she finds love along the way, and will her outrageous ways get the better of her, because she's quite a scandalous character.
And where did the idea come from to write this kind of book?
Well, the idea has been around I actually started writing this book about 19 years ago. No, about 19, 20 years ago. It was a very long time in the making. And originally, I wanted to write a book to explore modern dating because at the time, even though it was 20 years ago, at the time I felt like the dating game had really changed. And whereas I think prior to that, I'd always felt like a lot of dating was revolving around love and values and morals and things like that. I felt like I was in a situation or around people talking about what someone's got, what car they drive, what house they live in, what they can do for them. So I wanted to explore the whole notion of gold diggers and gold digging and love and values. And I just thought if I could create a character who could really embody that, and then also talk about a subject that I'm very passionate about, which is music. And I love music. I've always loved music. I wanted to make sure that was really entrenched in the story. So I then came up with the idea to create this character who's quite a entertaining character in quite a entertaining world. So I created this whole world of this urban entertainment TV station, but with it have a thought-provoking message looking at sort of morals and values within that. And that's how I kind of came up with the idea. I just wanted it to be very contemporary. And I think for me at the time, I'd just finished co-editing an award-winning anthology with another author, Leonie Ross, and it was a combination of 17 stories by unknown writers of Black and Asian origin from the West Midlands. And the book did really well. Thankfully, it went on to win an award, and it was nominated for several awards, including one of the 10 best books to represent Britain, modern books during World Book Day that year. I just remember coming away from that project feeling like I really wanted to write a contemporary story, because I think quite a lot of the stories that I had read up until that point, novels, had really revolved around kind of race, culture, politics, gang related issues. There didn't seem to be many rom-coms or sort of contemporary stories with just everyday characters doing everyday things without any sort of issues around politics, race, or crime or anything like that. And I just really wanted to write about people like me, young Black professionals, dating, looking for love, going to the gym, going to Nando's, going to church, just regular everyday stories. And I think I was really inspired to write commercial fiction, which represents today's communities that I'm surrounded by.
And that's what I love about the book. I love the fact that it's a Black British book. I love the fact that it's based in Birmingham. So you talk about Handsworth in the bits that I've read so far. So it feels like it's got a local feel to it as well. And it's normalizing us doing everyday things. And I think that's its unique selling point that I love American fiction in particular. But I love this even more in terms that it's things that I can relate to. Who
Oh,
hasn't had a cheeky Nando's, who hasn't gone to a nightclub and, seen how things get played out in that kind of scene, how we date, how we find, boyfriends and girlfriends and how that pans out and what that looks like. I think it's fantastic. So, I'm determined to finish the book, and it's interesting the reasons behind it, how it came about and came into fruition. So, when did you publish your book and who published it for you?
Thank you for that. And it's an interesting point that you've just made, which I'd like to pick up on, because what actually happened was that, like I said, I had one book published. It was a collection of short stories by unknown authors by Tyndall Street Press called Whispers in the Walls. It won quite a few awards, and it was also bought by Radio 4, who bought three of the stories within that book. One of them was mine, The Darkest Hour, and my short story was adapted for Radio 4. So it was interesting because when it went out on Radio 4, quite a few people heard it and emailed me saying, oh, that's a really visual story. I felt like I could see everything. Why don't you make it into a film? At that point, I then contacted Channel 4 and I was shortlisted for a Channel 4 Ideas Film Factory short film competition. I didn't win, but I was inspired and ended up getting funded and directing and producing it myself. So I made The Darkest Hour into a short film. And a lot of the feedback I got was so positive, and everyone kept talking about it's nice to see just everyday Black people in a mainstream situation doing everyday things. Simultaneously, around the same time, I'd already written quite a bit of The Sweetest Sound, but I hadn't finished it, and I'd got sort of 40,000 words in, and I kind of felt like I really do need to get this project finished. After Whispers in the Walls, I won a Creative Ambition Award by the Arts Council. And the award, I could choose whatever I wanted to do with it, but it had to be something creative. It was a body of money. And I chose to go to New York, to the Harlem International Book Fair in New York. In New York, I met several African American authors. And like you, I'm a huge fan of African American literature, commercial fiction, novels by Eric Jerome Dickey, Carl Weber. There's a whole host of authors. And when I got to this book fair, I met so many people who felt that I was putting my accent on. They didn't believe I was Black British. And I was like, why do you think I'm not Black British? And they were like, because where are the books by Black British authors? Like, what do you do? And it struck me that everyone knows about the Empire Windrush generation, our parents that came over in the 60s, but so few people know about second and third and fourth generation Black Britons, their children. What are we doing? Where do we go? How do we date? What do we do? And I said, don't worry, I'm actually writing a story about us. I'm going to get it finished. They were like, just get it finished and bring it back. When I got back to England, I approached the Arts Council and said, look, I've got this story. I'm working full time. I haven't really got time to finish it. Is there an opportunity to get a bit of funding? And they said, well, what is it about? And when I explained what happened in America and the comments people were making about Black British contemporary fiction and the fact that's what I was trying to achieve, the Arts Council were quite impressed with that. They loved the idea. And as a result, they funded me to actually finish writing The Sweetest Sound. So I was very blessed to get to the end of the project, because I think part of my proposal, I explained to them that one of the things I really am keen to do is preserve the rich cultural heritage that we have in this country as second, third, and fourth Black generation citizens. And I just wanted our stories, our regular stories, to be there somewhere in the history books. Somebody could pick up in 100 years and think, oh, this is what they were doing in Birmingham, like Black people from the Caribbean. You know, we've all got so many stories to tell. And I feel like I'd just like to see a lot more of those stories, which, whilst they may touch on race and politics and culture, which is very, very important, a lot of the story revolves around just mainstream everyday things, and the characters happen to reflect myself, yourself, mainstream Black characters. And I think that that's a little bit more about the history of The Sweetest Sound. In terms of getting it published, which was the question you asked, so when I actually finished writing it, it was about 2013. At the time, what I was aware of was that it was quite difficult to get published unless you've got an agent. And at the time, I didn't have an agent. I still haven't got an agent. It's something that I'm working on. At the time, because I tried to get an agent and I had really positive feedback. I mean, agents were saying, we really like the story, but it's not for us at the moment, or, you know, maybe concentrate on changing a bit here or changing a bit there. There was a lot of positive feedback, but at the time, I didn't secure an agent. So for a couple of years, I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to leave it for now and see what happens. And then, in fact, tell a lie, that was around 2010 or 11, because then I put it down for a couple of years. 2013, I picked it back up and suddenly thought, I've got this whole manuscript, I'm not doing anything with it. So at that point, I decided to do a bit of research to find out which publishers take unsolicited manuscripts that you can send in yourself without an agent. I found out that there was one called Hansen Publications based in Hertfordshire, and they were specialists in publishing fiction by multicultural authors, and they were happy to look at work without an agent. I submitted three chapters and a synopsis to them. And then about a month or so later, I had a phone call from them saying they absolutely loved the book. Could they see the rest of it? So I submitted the whole manuscript, at which point they said they'd like to publish it. And that was how my publishing journey started. So it was all very exciting at the time. That was back in about 2013-14. And several rewrites later, a very long journey, it was eventually finally published, thankfully, in 2019.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
what a journey. And how did you find it working with Hansib? Because, they have a really good reputation in terms of working with Black and Asian emerging authors. But what was the experience like for you?
I have to say, I feel really honoured and really privileged to have worked with Hansib. And I think it's because they are, as far as I'm aware, the oldest or the longest running multicultural publisher in the UK who have specialised for over 50 years of making sure voices from underrepresented communities get out there and people can actually see our work. And for that, their history in the making. So I feel really grateful. I'm on their records of one of their authors. Working with them was absolutely fantastic because I think they were so positive in terms of celebratory about the work that I had done and just trying to make sure I was happy with it. I was comfortable with what they were doing. We talked about the audiences it could reach. And it was just a great experience, the back and forth in and all the rewrites. I mean, I put them through so much because I kept changing my mind because I started the story so long ago that by the time it came to publication, so many things were out of date. So chapters where I'd written about people listening to music on their Walkman, most people wouldn't even know what that was. And I had to change it to iPods, I had to change it to phones. So there was so much sort of rewriting because the story had been written over such a long period of time. They were very patient, very understanding, very supportive. And I just love their passion for making sure that these voices are heard and publishing these works that obviously once it's published, it's always out there somewhere. It was a privilege working with them. I absolutely loved it.
It's wonderful to hear that you had such a good book journey and that you embraced the challenges, especially the challenges of having to update your manuscript because of the time of where you started and where you are now. I upgraded my book, Loving the Brothers, 2 years after it was published. I felt that it was already out of date and I wanted to add bits to it. So it's interesting that you're saying something similar. The Sweetest Sound. Can you say more about the other protagonists in your book and a little bit more about how you developed those characters? I'm particularly interested in Money, for example. You've got a character called Money. And is it Dujon?
Dijon.
Yeah, Dijon. Yeah, yeah. Just
Yeah,
tell me more
Dijon.
about the male characters because they appear just as strong as the female characters as well. In terms of they're not playing a lesser role; they're up there as
Yeah.
with your main protagonists.
One of the things that I really wanted to focus on during this book was I wanted this book to be as realistic as possible. I wanted to make sure that people could read it and relate to the characters. I was working with a universal theme, which is dating, so most people can relate to that. I looked around and thought about the various different people I've met. I took inspiration from, people around me in different walks of life and just felt like I wanted to write a mixture of male characters so that it was a nice balance and there was an alternative. I think far too often, sort of in the media and elsewhere, I've seen male characters portrayed often quite negative. And I really wanted to move away from that because that is not my reality. My reality is I grew up with a father who taught me to read and write by the time I was 3 years old. And when I went to school, I could read and write. Obviously, he was really into education and he loved me. I mean, unconditional love. And I wanted to show characters like that, not just sort of male characters doing negative things. So I created a character, Bailey, who actually runs the television station that they work at, Bling and Ting. And he is like a businessman, but he's so cool, calm, down to earth. He's just such a nice guy. And he's quite firm, but fair. And I just wanted to show the kind of Black man that I know, which is someone who is running their own business, someone who's quite powerful, someone who's doing something really positive and trying to empower and uplift other people. So I think it was quite important to have that kind of a character in the book. Dijon, the cousin, I think it's fair to say that many of us will have a brother or a cousin or a nephew or someone who's quite similar to Dijon. Dijon is a ladies' man. He's very funny. He's down to earth. He's someone who will tell it as it is. He's quite blunt. He's hardcore, and I just thought he's so real. Like we just need someone like that in the book, because it's just normal. It's reality. And the one thing I wanted people to do when they read this book is to come away and think, oh my God, that's so realistic. They feel like it really happened. And then Money, he was a really interesting one to create because growing up watching a lot of African American films, I've always had this thing where, God, African American men are so fine and they're this and they're that and they're very exciting. And I think anytime I've met an African American man in Britain, it's always been quite intriguing because it's just like the accent and the way they come across and everything. So I just thought I wanted that kind of a character in this novel because, once again, to me, it was quite realistic that he would be over here in Britain. She would be drawn to him because he might remind her of one of the many actors like, I don't know, Morris Chestnut or Tyson Beckford. We've grown up with these characters that we've watched on screen thinking, oh, they're so nice, they're so nice. So I just thought, let me just bring someone like that to Britain and she can meet him. So that was where the interest was with Money, and the fact that he was a basketball player and he was tall and he's handsomely sexy and all these great things, got lots of swag. But then obviously he needed to be a bit of a bad boy because we couldn't have him being completely perfect. So that's how I sort of created Money. I wanted someone that, once again, people can relate to and it's believable. Another character, one of my favorites, Dante, he is a character, he's Money's cousin and he's dating somehow my main character, he's dating Sai's best friend, Kamara. And Dante is just a regular guy. He's just got a good job. He's a sports physiotherapist. He absolutely adores Kamara. And for me, it was a really nice way to look at romance and have that kind of whole loving element to the story. Just two people just falling in love, enjoying each other. I just really wanted to get all these different kind of characters around out rather than it just sort of being one type of male character in the book. And actually, the character who everyone seems to have fallen in love with, who you haven't met yet, because he comes in later, is a character called Caden. So he is someone else that it's interesting because of all the characters, people have most contacted me and expressed an interest in Caden, Malachi, aka Caden. So yeah, I worked quite hard to create a really good mix of black male and female characters in different walks of life in Britain, second, third, and fourth generation type.
Well, from what I've read so far, I've been gripped. So I don't want any spoiler alerts. I want to enjoy the story of everybody else. I was gripped from the first line. So would you mind actually reading a couple of paragraphs from chapter one?
Yes, certainly. Thank you. So, chapter one, the truth is, I like bad men. You know the type, tall, dark, and handsome, with no fixed address or identifiable occupation, the sort that attracts you like a magnet, usually when you're feeling a little vulnerable, and ends up leaving you more wounded than when he found you. Normally, it starts with intense eye contact, often at a club or a bar, then a smile. He always has slick words, a compliment that makes you blush, giggle. Then he makes it quite clear that he wants you in the worst way. But you try and convince yourself he's interested in your mind, captivated by your witty, intelligent conversation. Your mind's telling you no, your body's telling you yes. A loud inner voice is screaming, run! But you can't seem to respond. You are literally paralyzed in that moment. Small talk doesn't last long, and before you know what, you've lost your mind. You're running around at his beck and call, always available when he wants to see you, constantly checking your phone to make sure you're not missing any of his calls, cancelling important appointments and taking sick days off work to be with him. You're spending time, money, and energy investing in this guy, making him a priority, when the reality is, for him, you're just an option.
Absolutely fantastic. Where's the audio book?
Oh, the audiobook is coming. It's a lot of people have requested it, so it's something I'm definitely working on. I hope it will be out at some point this year.
Would that be something that you would narrate yourself, or would you have somebody do that for you?
At this moment in time, I am thinking about potential actors, But at the same time, a few people have said to me, perhaps it's something that I might want to consider narrating myself. It's something that perhaps potentially I could do myself and see how we get on with that.
Now I realise it's not straightforward. Narrating the story is very different and requires different skill set that you need to bring to that as well. And there are
Yeah, exactly.
people out there. I'm thinking about famous people really who I think would really do the sweetest sound a lot of justice. Like Michaela Cole is somebody that I think could lend herself to, your principal character quite easily.
Michaela Cole, I'm an admirer. She's fantastic. It would be great for someone like her or her to do it. That would be lovely if I could get that interest.
And when did you say we could expect an audiobook?
Some point this year, I'm not sure because I'm currently working on the sequel to The Sweetest Sound. I wasn't planning to write a sequel. This book was a one off. But then I feel really fortunate and blessed to say that I've had so much interest in it. And the majority of people that have read the first book have asked me what happens next. Everyone wants to know what happens next. So after a while, I just felt like I owe it to the readers to write a sequel. I've had a look at some of the reviews on Amazon, and everyone, almost every review, it's like, I want to know what happens next. When's the next book coming? So I'm definitely going to write the sequel. So I'm hoping to have that done by the summer, and maybe I could look at the audiobook for The Sweetest Sound at the same time as getting the sequel out.
Do you have a title for the second book?
To be honest with you, at the moment, the working title is The Sweetest Sound 2, with like a little subheading. Towards the end, I might change the title, but I'm very good at working titles. So throughout the whole of The Sweetest Sound 1, the title was All That Glitters. That was going to be the title when it was published. And then just before it was published, I had a Googled, I had a look and realized that there were so many books out there called All That Glitters. And whilst the concept was sort of relatable with the story, I just kind of felt I want something a bit more original. I love to have conversations with my mum around things like this because she's my late mum. She's passed away now, but she's absolutely amazing. She was absolutely amazing, and she was like one of my main inspirations throughout everything. And she had a little saying that says, "What's sweet you now is going sour you later." It's like a Caribbean saying, and I kept thinking, Sahai is always looking for the man with the money, the most exciting thing. Is it going to be sweet? Is it going to be sour? So I thought, oh, maybe I could incorporate that into the title. And then obviously, because there was a lot of music, I thought, and with sound as well. So is the sweetest sound really the sweetest sound or not? That's how I ended up coming with that title at the last minute. And I'm glad that I did because there are so few books around with that title, if any. I think there might be one other one that I've seen. So I'll stick with the working title of The Sweetest Sound 2 whilst I write The Sweetest Sound 2. And towards the end, I may or may not change it.
I mean, it's interesting what you say about the book. I'm imagining is heavy loaded with music because that's underpins the book. And I think what I intend to do is to actually pause, look up the track that you're referring to in the book, so that I could get a deeper understanding of why that track is part of the book. And there's nothing wrong with that. I've done that with, people have done that with Loving the Brothers and Loving the Sisters as well, because they want to
Okay.
get the mood right,
Yeah.
so they will then pause and look up the track. And yes, I think that's really good. But how important is music to you?
So music is very important to me. I grew up in I feel like a very musical environment, just in terms of music being played in the house. So I can play the piano by ear, but I'm not trained. Um, my dad was an amazing singer. My dad has passed away sadly, but he was absolutely incredible. He was an amazing singer, and he was always playing. Like we used to wake up every morning listening to Burning Spear. He always had that playing, or he would be playing Nat King Cole or Al Green. So we had all those greats around the house from as far back as I can remember. And my mum equally loved music. She had a lot of gospel records and she used to play them all the time. So I grew up just listening to music all the time. And as a result of that, I became a bit of a music addict. So from a very young age, I was the one who would always have like my little TDK tapes, recording all the music shows on the radio and sort of making sure I'm getting all my favorite artists. And as soon as I was old enough, I was out buying vinyl. I absolutely love vinyl, hence why it's on the cover of my book. And I just developed this great love affair with music to the point that I listen to it all the time. I've always got it in the background somewhere. And, you know, some of my favorite artists are like Marvin Gaye, because it's like he sings literally from the soul. You can hear every emotion. And I feel like that inspires me so much. I wanted to get that across in the story. Just the fact that she came up with a whole idea around music. Yes, music's a major part of my life. It is a soundtrack to my life. And I actually did start a soundtrack to go with the book, The Sweetest Sound. Got a lot of singers in the family, a lot of talent. So many of them were singing songs, and we had a theme tune and all kinds of things. We haven't developed that any further yet, but it's something we're still working on. So I think when I release The Sweetest Sound to it might come with a soundtrack of original music as opposed to the music that's in the book, for obvious reasons. So we'll see how we go with that, because music for me is it's a major thing. It's so universal. Everyone can relate to it. You can just hear a song and it takes you to a certain time or a certain place with a memory, or it can make you feel good, or it's just music is so evocative. I just love it. So I just feel like I wanted to put that passion into the novel.
Do you play music while you're writing?
A lot of the time, yeah. A lot of this book was written with music on in the background. I have to say, I'm a fan of hip hop, old school hip hop as well. So I often have hip hop playing. I also love, oh God, I love everything, R&B, reggae, slow jams, the whole lot. So quite often I would have music playing in the background, definitely. And also, I love to travel. I'm a big traveler. A lot of The Sweetest Sound was written in many different countries. So some of it was written, you know, on beaches in, I don't know, Miami, Dubai, Jamaica, Mexico, all the various countries I go to. I'm sat there with my laptop or my pen and paper writing on the beach. There would always be music playing. You've got the vibe. And I'd be like, right, what scrape can I get her into next? Because for me, writing, that's the other thing I wanted to say to you. It's an interesting one because I've never really plotted anything that I've ever written. All I do is literally sit down with a pen and paper and I'm like, I want to write about someone like this. And then I literally just start writing and let them tell the story. You know, I've had some amazing mentors in my time. And one mentor said to me, the thing about doing that is that you'll come to a certain roadblock and you'll realize you don't know where the story's going. And that's exactly what happened halfway through The Sweetest Sound. I suddenly thought, I don't know what's going on. And he said, it's like you're going on a journey with no roadmap. So you do need some kind of a plot. For me, the exciting thing about The Sweetest Sound was that I was literally writing it as it was going along, letting her tell the story with the music in the background, with the vibes all around me. And then it was only at a point where I felt like I needed to plot the rest of it that I actually then sat down and thought, where can we go from here?
You know, when you talk about not having a plot, that was very similar to Loving the Brothers. It started where it started and it ended where it ended. But when you're approaching agents and publishing houses and so on, they want to see that you do have an idea of where your story is going to go. And this time round with Loving the Sisters, it was very much this happens in this chapter, and by the end of that chapter, the reader will know X, Y, and Z. And I plotted that all the way through to the end of the book. But like yourself, when it comes to writing Loving the Children, I'm not sure where it's going. And I've now understood that writer's block is a real phenomenon. So, have you ever suffered from writer's block, and how did you move the story on?
I have experienced writer's block. I've written other stories as well as The Sweetest Sound and The Darkest Hour, Whispers in the Walls. There was another story that I wrote called Mango, which was published in an anthology I co edited called Original Skin, which was another collection of short stories by unknown writers from Birmingham. It was sort of established writers like myself mentoring other writers that were writing for the first time. And the story I wrote for that book, Mango, I had quite a bit of writer's block with that story because I knew I wanted it to be about three young boys in London, sort of skiving from school, getting into trouble. The theory behind that story was you've got to be careful who you meet because you never know who they are and how you treat people. And I felt like because that story wasn't really clearly thought out when I started it, I did have quite a bit of writer's block trying to work out what was going to happen, how they were going to do what they were going to do, what would the end be, that kind of thing. And I think quite often in situations like that, I just literally tend to sit down and really think about sort of characters in reality, people in situations like that. What could the worst case scenario be? What have people got to lose? What's at risk? What's at stake? And I start to think around issues like that. And that helped me kind of work out what it is I need to be writing and where I need to focus, what I need to focus on in order to develop the story further.
Was your main strategy really?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because with writer's block, a lot of people say, just go make a cup of tea, go away from the story, have a break, go for a walk, do this, do that. But I feel like for me personally, a lot of my inspiration comes from the world around me. My inspiration comes from places I've traveled to, countries I've seen, people I've met, different cultures. It comes from music, sort of lyrics in music, stories that people tell, things that people have been through, life experiences. So I think the main way for me to deal with writer's block is to draw on some of those kind of inspirations, sayings, things that people have said. But I suddenly think that's a really interesting concept. What can I talk about with that as the concept? I tend to then go back to the drawing board and start to think about what is it that needs to come out in the story? What is the story that I'm actually trying to tell? And what's the most entertaining, engaging, and interesting way of thinking about how I can tell this story? I mean, in the Sweetest Sound, there are so many parts of the Sweetest Sound that I've dipped into other elements. So, for example, I'm very passionate about Black history and culture, and I really wanted it in the story. But I spent ages trying to think, how can I get it into this story? So then I created a character who was passionate about Black history and culture. And that was his main thing, to talk about Black history and culture. So I was able to then come up with a way of injecting that into the story. And that character was pretty much drawn on someone I'd met when I was at university and I was part of the African Caribbean Student Society. And there were many people of that kind of personality. And I thought, oh, yeah, I could get him in here and he could do the cultural thing. So it's always thinking about how can I tell the story I want with the elements I want in the most engaging ways.
I've just met that character in the book, so yes, I could
Jerome.
relate to that. Yeah, yeah. Any advice that you have, Yvonne, for people who may aspire to do the same thing, become a writer or are aspiring writers? They may have a few notes written down, but not really sure how to start.
I think the main thing I would say is literally just keep pen to paper. One of the main things that stops people is they just keep thinking, oh, I don't know where to start. I don't know who my audience is. I'm not sure what to write about. And I just say, look, just sit down in front of a piece of paper and just write whatever comes into your head. Just write. Don't worry about having it all plotted out. Don't worry about if it's going to sound right or look good or the grammar or anything. Just have a stream of consciousness, get it all down. Because the good thing about doing that is once it's all down on paper and just keep going, don't worry, just write whatever, no matter how silly it sounds, just write. And then at the end of it all, you can then look back at it and think, oh, okay, I can rewrite this, or this didn't work, or that didn't work. And that's when you can actually look at it at the end of a chapter, at the end of a paragraph, at the end of the whole book, at whatever stage, there's always room to do that. But I think the most important thing is don't be put off. I feel that anybody can write, and writing is amazing in terms of it serves so many purposes. It could be used as a healing process. It could be used for creativity. It could be used for information. It could be used for entertainment. It could be used to tell personal stories. It's so many different formats that writing takes place in, whether it's songwriting, novels, poems, literature, autobiographies. So I just feel like we've all got a story in us, and the more the merrier. And I feel like just sit down and write, just keep pen to paper and keep going, and don't worry about it. At the end of it all, when you start to worry whether you want to get an editor involved, whether you want to sit down and go through it yourself, do that. The main advice I would give to any aspiring writer is like the Nike advert says, just do it.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. It sounds like a TEDx talk in there when you started off. Yeah, it might be another avenue. But when you're not writing, when you're not working, when you're not promoting your books, how does Yvonne relax? And what does taking time off look like for you?
I love to travel. So I do spend quite a lot of time out the country, and I just love being in sunny places, and I love being amongst different cultures. So, I've been some of my favorite places, like I've been to like Egypt and Gambia. I love going back to Jamaica quite often because that's where my family originate from. So I go and spend time out there. So traveling is a big one. As I've also mentioned, I love music. So when I'm not working or busy, I will spend a lot of time listening to music and making playlists and just doing anything to do with music. I'm also a big fan of health and fitness and sort of mind and well-being. So I will spend quite a lot of time in, natural environments. I like going for walks and sort of being out in the countryside and doing things like that. And I'm also a big family person. I love being around family. So any family event or as much opportunity as I can get, being so busy with working full time and writing novels, any spare time I can get to sort of spend with my family and my loved ones, that's a big thing for me. So that's sort of the way that I would tend to wind down and relax and just chill.
That's wonderful. And obviously, we couldn't travel during the pandemic, but where have you just come back from, or where are you about to go to?
Well, I've just come back from Jamaica not too long ago, which was absolutely lovely. It was amazing to get out there because I tried to go as often as possible. And the last time I'd been was 2019 before the pandemic. We've got a massive family out there. I mean, we had a family reunion a few years ago, and there was over 300 of us there from all over the place, America, Jamaica, Britain. So I think, yeah, just being in Jamaica recently was lovely to see the family again and get out to Kingston and see my uncle and my cousins and everything. And obviously, Jamaica is just so beautiful from the waterfalls to just the lush scenery. I mean, it's just so nice reconnecting with roots and culture. So that was lovely. This year so far, I haven't got any plans, immediate plans to go anywhere because I'm so busy trying to finish these books and these projects. But I'm hoping to go away at some point later this year, and I'm not quite sure where just yet. But at some point this year, I'd like to travel somewhere nice.
I always have to mention that I've been to Jamaica twice, to Montego Bay the first time and to Ocho the second. I do believe that every Caribbean island has something to offer. So I suppose my dream trip would be visiting each island and
Yeah.
island hopping and experiencing the uniqueness of every island. So
Oh,
that sounds
definitely.
like the perfect holiday for me.
I love the Caribbean, and like you're saying, I've been fortunate to go to quite a few. I've been Barbados and Grenada and Saint Lucia. I've been to quite a few of the islands, so it's just beautiful there, isn't it? So any opportunity to be there. Antigua might be one on the list. To be fair, Antigua would be nice.
Yes, yes, I've been to Antigua as part of a Caribbean cruise. So
Ah,
yeah, yeah,
nice.
you would be in for an amazing time. As I said, each island has something unique about it to offer visitors, and it just feels like you're home. Anywhere in the Caribbean just feels like you're home at home, which is wonderful. Yvonne, I think that's it. I think we've come to the end of our interview. If people wanted to get hold of you, how would they do that? What are your handles on social media?
If people wanted to get hold of me, because there was something else I didn't mention actually that I really wanted to talk about to do with the Sweetest Sound, if I've got time to quickly tell you. So when the Sweetest Sound came out in September 2019, thankfully it was launched at Waterstones and was sold out within a week. So I was very, very grateful for that. And then within 2 weeks, it was picked up to be made into a feature film by a very established independent filmmaker called Menelik Shabazz, who I met with in London. And he showed me his vision for the film, and we had a fantastic talk. And I went away and wrote a screenplay. Very sadly, Menelik Shabazz passed away the year after, so it didn't come to fruition. And prior to him passing away, he had said to me that he really, really loved the concept, but because of the pandemic and raising funds, it was no longer going to happen with him. But his vision was so amazing that I'm really, really still working towards trying to get it picked up to be made into a feature film. That's something really, really important to me. So that's something I'm looking ahead to coming years as well. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thing is about having a podcast and having it going out globally is that you never know who's listening, who then may be able to put you in touch with somebody else who knows somebody else. It tends to be how these things work, not necessarily what you know, but also the connections that you make as well. So I was the first to say when I started the podcast, every week I was asking someone if they knew a publisher who might be interested in my books to get in touch. So I'm glad that you put your pitch forward to let people know that that's something that you would like to do. And
Exactly.
it's very unfortunate that, Menelik passed away. I'm really hoping for you that, somebody else comes through. I've got a few people in mind that I will tell you about as well who, again, we want a British feel to this.
Yes,
And there are some
definitely.
amazing series which are coming out at the moment. Did you catch Richards on
I'm
ITVX? And
aware.
what did you make of that?
I'm aware of Riches. I haven't actually watched it as yet. I am very much aware of it, and I'm looking forward to watching it. That's one that I've heard about. And like you, whilst I am on this podcast, I will say that I feel very blessed to have had an amazing journey so far with writing. But I'm very much looking for an agent and a publisher of the Sweetest Sound too. I'm very interested in anyone who feels like a commercial novel like the Sweetest Sound might be something for them. So I'd be really keen if anybody wanted to get in contact with me. And to answer your question, the best way to contact me is on Instagram, which it's Yvonne underscore Brissett. That's YVONNE underscore BRISSETT. That's my Instagram handle. Alternatively, you could always get me on email, which would be Yvonne YVONNE Brissett BRISSETT at yahoo.co.uk. They're the best ways to contact me. If we could work together and collaborate and produce something exciting, that would be lovely.
Thank you. And how about the book? Where can people get hold of the book if they want to? You said Waterstones already, but anywhere
Yeah.
else?
So the book is in Waterstones, it's WH Smith's, it's available on Amazon, it's available in quite a lot of bookstores. If you go online, you'll see that it's available at various different places, and equally it's available from me. It's also available from Hansid Publications, so you can go on their website and get it, or you could contact me direct if you like a personal signed copy. You could get that from me if you DM me on Instagram. So the book is available on many platforms.
That's fantastic. And of course, if people enter our competition, they can also win a signed copy of The Sweetest Sound as well. So I've got a feeling it's going to go quite quickly. Yvonne, thank you for your time because I know that you're an extremely busy person. So thank you for spending time with us and talking about your books and your career and your future books that are going to come out. I wish you all the very best for the future.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely talking to you. Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Yvonne Brissett. It's question time now. What was the name of the anthology that her story Mango was published in? Taking part in the competitions couldn't be easier. Simply contact me on Instagram at Loving the Author and send me a direct message with the correct answer by this Friday at 5 o'clock GMT. Good luck and bye for now.